Hello and welcome to an Unreal Engine 4 tutorial on how to change action mappings via blueprints. So Unreal offers us the ability to create custom action mappings via the input settings. And so for example, here I've registered an open UI action as well as a swivel action. I've assigned a key P to open UI and spacebar to swivel. This means that when I play the game, I've currently set it up so that pressing spacebar will swivel. I've got a chair pawn that listens for this and will swivel. As you can see, I just press P and the chair does something. Now, in many games, what would happen is the player can open up a controls panel, like a settings, control settings, and reassign keys to certain actions. So for example, they might want to use Kiev to shoot the gun instead of spacebar, etc, etc. So in this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to achieve this via blueprints so that the player can open up the UI like this, and then click on a key selector, and then click on the keyboard, for example G, and reassign the action so that when I close this, and now I press spacebar, nothing happens any longer, and instead I press G, and the action mapping is now reassigned to G. So let me just go over how that works. So I've set up a chair pawn that listens out for the swivel and then open UI actions. Swivel simply just adds torque and makes a spin. Open UI is what's used to open up the UI for selecting the new key. There's a bit of boilerplate code for setting up the UI, for showing it and hiding it. That's all this stuff here. And the point of the UI is just to let the player change the action mappings. In order to do this, when the chair pawn first opens up the UI, it needs to pass to the UI the current key that it used to trigger the swivel action. And this is achieved by the chair pawn storing a input action key struct for the swivel action. So what happens is, in the begin play, we call get input settings, which is a node available on most blueprints. So you right click and look for get input settings, and that will allow you to call the function get action mappings by name. And what that does is you pass in the name of an action mapping, so swivel, as we set up in input settings, and it will return you the list of mappings for that action. So in essence, what this is it will go into input settings, look for the swivel name, and then return this list of actions. So you can imagine there may be multiple keys that can be used to trigger this swivel action. But for now, let's just keep it at G. And so it will just return you that list, which is encapsulated in the data structure input action key map. And so what we're doing here, just storing that so that when we show the UI, here, we can call this function called initialize action mapping data. And that is part of the input selection UI widget I've created. And what that has in this function is it will just pass that data from the chair pawn to this widget. And let me just show you what widgets are part of this UI first. So there is a text block. There's a text widget which is used to display the name of the action, and then there is a key selector widget which is provided by Unreal that allows the player to click on it and then click on a key on the keyboard, etc., and cause an event to fire with that key. And then there's also a close button which is used to hide the UI and for some other functionality that I'll explain in a bit. So we have the text block and the key selector, and that's originally not initialized to the correct values. So what the initialize action mapping data function does is it will take the current swivel mapping, get the name of the action, which is swivel, and set that text. So set the text of this to swivel, and then it will also access the current key for this mapping and set the selected key. So in essence, what that would have then achieved is that I have G as the key and swivel as the name. So when I click play and press P to show the UI, G is shown on the input key selector and swivel is the name. And that's all that does. Now, in order to actually get behavior and allow this key selector to affect the input settings, what I've done here is, in the event graph, I've added in behavior to two events. So the onKeySelected event is part of the key selector, and you can click on it and just add a response to the onKeySelected event. And what we will do here is, first let me explain. So the onKeySelected event is called when the player clicks on the key selector and then clicks on the key. So that's when they select a new key. This selected key is then passed through the event, and we are just going to simply update the chair pawn's current swivel mapping variable, so this one, to actually use the new key the player has given us. And then later on, when the player clicks on the close button, we'll actually start registering the new key mapping inside the chair pawn. So when we click close on the button, when we click on the close button, what we want to do is, firstly, we want to remove any existing mappings for the action swivel. So what I've done here is, I've taken the current swivel mapping data from chair pawn, and I've taken the name and used it to get the action mapping like before. So this is the exact same function here, get action mappings by name. I've done that here. And I'm just going to loop through all the mappings and just remove it from the input settings. So remove action mappings is a function that is part of the input settings, and it just simply, as it says, removes the mapping. And once all of that is done, we now have a fresh slate to add any new mappings we would like to register with the swivel action. So what we do here is we get the current swivel mapping and simply call add action mapping on the input settings. So input settings has a function called add action mappings that just takes in a input action key mapping structure, which is what we've stored in the chair. And once that's done, it basically replaces so this entire code is equivalent to us going into input, finding swivel, and seeing, oh look, there's a G here, I don't want that anymore. I'm going to have a spacebar instead. So that is exactly what we've just done. And as you can see, this is quite a basic system so far, but with these remove action mappings, add action mapping, and get action mapping by name functions, it's easy to imagine that you could probably create some more complicated systems out of it. So to conclude, what we built is a way of having an original action mapping, like spacebar for the swivel. We can open up a UI and then change the key we want to cause this action to occur, and then after that we can use the new key pressing B here to cause the action. Yeah, so thanks for watching.